Hello, everyone. Are we all set?
Yeah, we should be good. Kites are
Okay.
just checking the panelist list to see if everybody's here.
I'm just checking myself. So we've got 1, 2, 3, almost.
Yeah, Dan should be coming in right now.
Absolutely. Perfect. Okay, thank you, everybody. So we are ready to get started. It is 7:02, and I am calling the meeting to order. This is for the Lackawanna Unified School District governing regular meeting of the governing board. It is June 29th, 2021. There is nothing to report out of closed session. Dan, do you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure, if you could please join me, place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dan. I am going to read the item that we have read based on our public meetings, our virtual meetings that we have. So on March 17th, 2020, our governor issued Executive Order N-2920. Under this new order, a district can now comply with public attendance and comment requirements of the Brown Act by holding a meeting via teleconferencing and allowing members of the public to observe and comment either telephonically or otherwise electronically. Public comments are being accepted online and will be read by district staff after board discussion of the presented items. Okay. Thank you so much. We kind of switched that around. Now we've got the Pledge of Allegiance and the statement read. Do we have the minutes? Can I have a motion to have the minutes approved?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Josh. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Caroline. Any comments or discussions? Okay, all in favor? If I could see everyone's hand. Perfect. I've got everyone's hand visible. Dan, Caroline, Josh, Joe, and myself. Thank you. The minutes are approved as listed on the agenda. Let's move on to our reports. Let's begin with you, Wendy.
Thank you, Kreitzer. Good evening, everybody. My report this evening will be brief, as two of tonight's agenda items relate directly to my goals from this past year and are reflective of the major emphasis of my work over the last 2.5 weeks as we officially close the school year as of June 30th tomorrow. First, I want to give a brief update on enrollment trends. Since my last report, we have updated new student registrations and student withdrawals, and that information has come from not only the district office, but from the school sites. And our enrollment, based on all of the dust settling, has ticked up by just a few students. Our current total enrollment at district-wide is 3,994. We see a daily influx of registrations at the district office, and I'm confident that our final number will be a dozen plus in excess of the 4,000 student mark. Some information and snapshots from each school site include the following insights. LCE is at 643 students. That's 13 above last year's enrollment, and they have one additional class. TK still has 8 remaining spaces, and their 6th grade has low numbers with 18 spaces remaining. PCY's total enrollment is at 656. That is down from 673 last year. PCY has 1 fewer class. The most available grade level space is in its 1st grade with 13 spaces remaining, and its fullest grade level is 4th with 4 spaces remaining. PCR has 1 additional class this year. Their total enrollment is 618. That's up from 593 last year. PCR's 4th grade trends are really indicative of healthy enrollment trends district-wide. They have 1 space in 4th grade. There were 79 students who rolled up from 3rd grade, and 1 of those students transferred out. We have transferred in 11 new resident enrollments, so the current grade level has 89 students. So, I mean, I think that's just a one school, one grade level snapshot of just some of the trends that we're seeing district-wide. At LCHS 712, the 7th grade is on the smaller side with a total of 303 students. As 6th graders, the rising 7th grade class has had only 3 classes at LCE and PCR, and often all 3 elementary sites promote 4 6th grade classes. The rising 8th grade class by comparison is at 354 students. At our high school, the largest grade level is our 10th grade class, which has 372 students. The greatest number of students to matriculate out of LCUSD is from our rising 9th grade class, with 25 students leaving. That trend is followed by our rising 7th grade class, which has 13 students withdrawing. This is a typical trend, not one to be hugely concerning, as those grade levels tend to be the grades where students matriculate out. They represent natural breaks for joining independent schools or faith-based schools, or families may move during these transition because their students would be joining a new school on the natural anyway. In grades 8, 10, 11, and 12, the average number of students withdrawing is 3.5. So we see enrollment trending quite evenly in all of those other grade levels. So I'm not concerned by 7th and 9th, but I think that it's something that we continue to watch. But it is typically where we see students matriculate out for just, for obvious reasons. For my next update, I wanted to give you some information on the current number of parent or community member applications for the DEI Oversight Committee. Currently, we have 17 applications. That was as of 4:30 this evening. And there is a representative balance of interests among the applicants. The applicant process closes for parents and community members tomorrow, Wednesday, June 30th at 9 p.m. And I would encourage people to apply. 17 is a healthy number, and it's good that we have a balance, just at least on a cursory read. I haven't done a close read on all of the apps, but I do see a balance clearly emerging. And for our LCUSD teachers and staff, their application process will open over the course of the next week, and it will also run for 2 weeks. Finally, since our last meeting, I want to just say hats off to our Human Resources Department. In open session, probably in August, we'll give you a full update of all of the new hires. But they, in the past, since our last meeting, have issued 2 media releases, our Human Resources Department, and I'd like to share with you those with you. La Cañada High School is proud and excited to announce that longtime assistant coach and most recently interim head coach, Carl Gishwender, has officially been named as the head coach of La Cañada High School varsity baseball. During the 2021 COVID season, Coach Gishwender was instrumental in rallying the team during tremendously difficult times. Through his leadership, the high school baseball team finished with an overall record of 13-6, a second place finish in the Rio Hondo League, and a CIF playoff berth. Coach Gishwender is excited for the upcoming season, and he looks forward to continuing to build on the excellent culture of LCHS baseball. And after an extensive search, La Cañada High School is also proud to announce the hiring of Coach Dave Avramovich, our new head varsity football coach. Coach Avramovich is a charismatic leader focused on the athletic, academic, and social development of his players. Coach has been a longtime assistant at both San Marino High School and La Cañada High School, most recently overhauling our LCHS Spartan defense as the defensive coordinator, and he now looks to build the Spartan football program into a force to be reckoned, not only within the Rio Hondo League, but throughout the San Gabriel Valley. Our high school and our district are extremely thankful to have Coach Avramovich as our head coach, and as his passion for the sport and his commitment to his players is exceptional. We are grateful for his dedication to the program, and we look forward to seeing our Spartans take the field under Friday Night Lights in the fall. So just a quick glance at high school athletics and our hiring. Much more to come from Human Resources, but that's it for me for tonight, Kaiser. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I look forward to additional information in future meetings. Thank you. My report's going to be very brief. We have a full agenda. Honestly, my focus is really safety, security, and wellness. We've got our students coming back to a regular bell schedule that we're hoping and planning, or we're planning for. And I just want to make sure that we are really focused as a district, looking to make sure that our staff and our students transition as smoothly as possible into our regular schedule after a 15-month or an interesting year and a half. Let's just leave it at that. So really, honestly, that's really going to be my focus, and that's what I'm going to continue to ask the district to update us on as we move ahead. And I know you've got some updates in the presentation today, Wendy. Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, I'll just be brief. I want to again encourage our community members to join up for our oversight committees. We have two, the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, as well as the Bond Oversight Committee, and those applications are available on our website under those buttons, and we're accepting them through the month of July. So we have some vacancies and we'd love to have some people sign up.
Thank you. We need some community participation. Thank you so much. We also need an update from our Chief Technology Officer, Jamie, if you could give us a quick update as well.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So for my report tonight, I want to update the board on the progress related to the AV upgrades in the boardroom building at the district office. So we've engaged a really strong installer, Studio Spectrum. We worked with Ken and his team on the football field and the baseball field upgrades. And just giving a little bit of background about his work, he has worked at giant companies and corporations as well as local schools. I think he's done installation, St. Francis, Flint Ridge Prep, Sacred Heart, not Sacred Heart, St. Bede. So definitely in the area. And he does work from government kind of installations like what we're looking at in the boardroom for AV upgrades to classrooms. So really extensive knowledge and super passionate. So I'm excited to work with him again. So right now the equipment is in transit. So we are looking at equipment, audio equipment for the mixing and receiving the audio sound, a couple wide angle cameras. So just keeping very minimal in terms of how we would record video in the space. And then being able to kind of continue that live streaming. We're going to install a couple extra screens so we can improve the way the audience and the board can kind of see the media in the space. So I think that'll be helpful. And I think just an update in terms of timing, the equipment is in transit with some already arrived, but there are supply chain disruptions going across the world still. So while we hope to have everything in place by the July meeting, it seems more possible that we'll be ready for August. And I also wanted to point out that with the executive order that allows for us to have remote meetings, that has been set to expire September 30th. So we still will be okay holding our July meeting remote if that's the wish of the board, so we can finish this project. And again, we have those provisions in place. And then lastly, Nairi and I have been compiling research on other districts and how they're planning to handle live streaming, public comments, all of those pieces when we go back to in-person meetings. And the one commonality, everybody's all over the place in terms of how they're planning to proceed, is very few accept comments throughout the whole meeting. That's the one thing we're seeing that is unique with our current design, but they're pretty split on whether or not they're going to keep remote comments as part of the process when they do return to in-person meetings. So we'll continue compiling that data, and I'll bring that forward as we start to decide how we want to kind of fine-tune process. And also just evaluate our strengths and needs from the last 15 months. And that's my report for tonight.
Thank you, Jamie. Definitely something for us to continue to learn more about as we plan to transition back into face-to-face meetings. So thank you for the information and the updates. I'm looking forward to coming back to face-to-face meetings. All right, anything for our review of the agenda? Hearing nothing and seeing no one really jumping up. Is there anything, Jamie and Nairi, opportunity for the public to address the board on non-agendized items? Do we have something?
Just one.
Okay.
Our comment comes from Jill Simone, an LCUSD parent, and this is on non-agendized items. She writes, I hope everyone is enjoying the beginning of our summer. Thank you for serving on the board to represent our community of families in our district. The fact that this board meeting is not conducted in person is a tragic display of censorship, apathy for families that carry and uplift our local schools and students, and a complete failure to effectively hear and communicate with those you serve. It saddens me on many levels. I hope our next board meeting returns to just and necessary in-person practices. It is safe, it is time. Please properly serve the community you represent. Thank you for your comment, Jill.
Thank you so much, Jill. All right, no other public comments on non-agendized items, correct? Is that
Correct.
what you do? Okay, perfect. Let's move on then to proposed action and discussion items. And if everyone will note, we have our second read items initially on the agenda, and then we have our first read items. So let's begin with second read item, the first one, which is the 2021. Well, it's a 3-year local control and accountability plan, the LCAP, the annual updates, budget overview for parents, et cetera. And we as a board are being asked to listen, to participate in discussion, and then potentially approve the LCAP. So Wendy, we'll go with you first, and then we'll move on. Wendy, I think you, okay.
Thank you. I just want to start out with heartfelt thanks to Karen Hurley and Jamie Lusader, who along with cabinet members, Anna Yiswen, Mark Evans, and then our Chief Human Resources Officer, Deborah Craddock, were so instrumental in this. But Karen and Jamie did the heavy lifting. This is a second read item. This does need to get delivered with board approval to the county, I believe tomorrow. And
by July 1st.
July 1st. Okay, so we have a few pieces of information regarding updates that were done since first reading to second reading, but Karen will take you through all of the details, and we'll go from there. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good evening, board members, cabinet members, Wendy. Thank you for having me this evening. So I'm just going to review a little bit of the background again, so that for those of you who may be new here this evening. So pursuant to Ed Code 52060, all districts must adopt and annually update the local control and accountability plan, otherwise known as the LCAP, and its annual update. The LCAP is a 3-year plan that describes a district's annual goals and specific actions to address state and local priorities that support outcomes for all students and student groups. And we'll talk a little bit later about the local priorities. But on or before July 1st, the governing board is required to adopt its LCAP. We've been working all year on the LCAP with quite a team of, I believe it was 43, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, 43 members of the team, roughly, majority parents. So we've been working really hard at getting feedback from stakeholders, all stakeholders in the district, so that we can create this plan that we will move forward beginning with year 1, and we can always adjust as we go along, but it is a 3-year plan. So again, as I mentioned, it does need to be adopted by July 1st. And we had a public hearing on June 8th, and where we presented the information. Now, since then, Jamie might be able to help me a little bit with this, but we did discover that there was a little bit of a glitch. We were missing 15 pages of our annual update because of some sort of glitch in the system, the data system that we were using, the
Document tracking.
Document tracking, correct. So they were able to give, what we do is we actually send it to the Los Angeles County Office of Education to review it, to make sure that we've covered everything that we need to cover and address. And they pointed that out, which we hadn't realized. So we were able to go in and complete the data. It was mainly focused on goal 3. So we were able to complete that data, and we've got that included in our report. And as well, there were a couple of items missing on our LCAP, not necessarily missing, but we hadn't written. There was a narrative we needed to write with regards to the stakeholder engagement, which we've done. That was incorporated. And then we also had to look at our
Supplemental and concentration funding.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm drawing
For
blank.
continued and improved services. Yeah.
Yes, for our unduplicated pupils. So we have gone ahead and made some adjustments there and updated our executive summary. So Again, you should have all received the budget overview for parents, the annual updates of the 2019-20 LCAP, which, like I said, we made a few adjustments because of the missing pages, our 2020-21 learning continuity and attendance plan, and then the new 2021-24 LCAP. Are there any questions? Have I missed anything, Jamie?
I would like to add, because this is about 300 to 400 pages of reading for anyone interested. It's thrilling writing. Karen and I are very proud of what we were able to put together, but we do have now published on the homepage of all the websites, there is the executive summary. So we have the 4 main goals that are featured in the 21 through 24 LCAP. And then underneath each of those 4 main goals, you'll find the actions and services that we plan to carry out in the next year. So that is what you'll see in action over the course of the next year. And it is part of a 3-year plan, but the LCAP committee does meet and kind of adjust progress, see how we're doing on our metrics, and then make recommendations as well as visit stakeholder groups. I think there were over 30 different stakeholder groups that were met with to explain the LCAP and share what the goals were and solicit feedback. So that's available for anybody that wants to read the short version.
Or maybe even the long version. Thank you, Jamie.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Karen. So let me go ahead and ask for a motion to approve, to discuss and potentially approve the LCAP, and a second, and then we'll open up for discussion and questions. Dan, thank you so much. I cut you off, Dan. I'm so sorry. You were trying to say you're moving to approve, correct?
Yes, so moved.
Thank you. And is there a second, Joe?
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Questions, updates, comments for Karen and for Jamie?
Nothing materials with the pieces that were missing, nothing materially changed in terms of the top level goals, right? There's nothing that was revised in the narrative of the language, correct?
Jamie, you're muted. Sorry.
Minus 5 points. What was technically hidden, because the goals carry over year to year, sometimes the system will hide the earlier goals. And that's where we found the problem, is that active actions within the major goals were hidden. So all that was missing was us reporting out on what money was spent on those actions. So we added that in. So that just went into the total report on how funds were spent. And then the second piece that we had to add was just a narrative form of what was called out in spending for the new plan. So we had, everything was in there. We just didn't have it in the narrative form. So that's what we had to fix. Yeah. So no goal changes.
Thank you, Joe, for that comment and that question. Anything else? While we're thinking, I don't want to take away from anyone. Have we gotten any public comments?
Checking right now. I don't believe so. Yeah, nothing on this item.
Okay. I just want to highlight that I actually remembered, so I'm excited for myself.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other comments? All right. Seeing no other comments, no public comments at this point, I want to personally thank everyone that was involved in the whole process of making sure everything's updated, catching everything, bringing it to us. It's a lot of work, the LCAP, so I do sincerely appreciate the work. If I can call, since we have a motion and a second, all in favor of approving the 2021-2024 through 2024 LCAP for LCUSD. I see Dan's hand, my hand, Caroline's hand, Joe's hand, and Josh's hand. Thank you, everyone, for your effort and the work. Moving on to the next item. Thank you, Karen. Next item is the 2020-2021 estimated actuals and the 21-22 budget. Shall I just jump to you, Mark?
Yes, that'd be fine. The second read is not terribly different than the first, but the budget goes hand in glove with the LCAP, and it gets the 2 reads. Our budget for 21-22 is right on target with where we were at the first read. Actually, as we closed the year, our estimated actuals came out a little in the positive with fewer expenditures. That typically happens because POs are not fully expended. And then next year in 21-22, most of those expenditures roll forward. So the net change over the course of the end of this year and next year's budget is about $10,000. So we may find some more of that happening because over the summer we do the official closing of the book, not the estimated actuals, but the unaudited actuals. So that ends up being predominantly the same as where we were at first interim. And in the multi-year outlook, we continued some salaries that were being funded by some of our one-time monies, and considering those will probably be going on. So we kept those rolling in the out year. So our ending funding balance drops in the third year out by a total of about $500,000, but we are still very well within the range of our 3.5% reserve. There are funds that in the budget are for transferring to Fund 14, our deferred maintenance. There will be some transfers to help pay for the cafeteria fund. And we're also recommending committing funds. We put away money for the textbook fund. We have done that consistently over the years. After LCAP passed, there were no longer restricted funds. So we made that our own policy of setting them aside and assigning them. But by committing them, and there will be a separate action later for the board, that actually designates them specifically for those purposes, and those purposes cannot be changed unless the board chooses to change it. It's a board action required. So it kind of protects that pot of money for the textbooks and future adoptions. And I think that the budget for this read is much thicker because we take all of the plans we do at the first interim and we actually upload it into the SACS, which is the state accounting code structure software, which gets submitted to this county and then to the state. So that's why it's such a bigger, bulkier budget presentation than at the first read. Are there any questions I can answer? Or?
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion to approve the 2020-21 estimated actuals and then the 21-22 budget. So do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 estimated actuals and budget.
Perfect. Thank you, John.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Dan. We've got a first and a second, or a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. Any clarification needed? Any questions, comments? Thank you for the continued work and update. It's every day is new information. So thank you, Mark. So while we're thinking, if we have any comments or questions, anything from our public, any comments, public comment?
No
public. Okay.
And I'll just add, I know this budget was finished up a week ago and the legislature is actually finished with the governor, the final budget negotiations. I don't think there will be anything significant, but we'll monitor that as it comes out. And if there are, we'll do a 45-day budget revision in August.
Okay, great. And it just so happens we have a meeting in August. Mark, this is so exciting. Thank you, everyone. All right, so no other comments or questions. Let me call the question. I have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the estimated actuals and the budget? I see everyone's hand. Caroline, Joe, Josh, Dan, and myself. Thank you, everyone, on behalf of this work. We are now going to move on to first read items. Our first item under first read is the 2020-2021 dashboard discussion, the local indicators. This is an opportunity to hear the presentation as a board and then to review and discuss. Ms. Karen Hurley, shall I just jump to you directly?
Sure. Thank you again for having me. So I've got a little presentation. Let me share my screen. Let's see here. Okay, let me move this out of the way and I will present. Okay, so thank you for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit about the California dashboard and then get into the local indicators a little bit so that it explains what this is all about. So the California School Dashboard is it's an online tool that was designed to help communities across the state of California access important information about K-12 schools and districts. If you haven't had a chance to look at the California School Dashboard, I've put the hyperlink on this spreadsheet, but all you have to do, on this slideshow, but all you have to do is Google California School Dashboard, and you just put in any school district that you want, the community, and you get lots of information. So the dashboard actually contains reports and that display the performance of district schools and student groups on a set of state and local measures. So that's important, state and local. I'll be talking about the local measures today. So these measures assist districts in identifying areas of strength, challenge, or areas that they may need improvement in. So let me talk a little bit about state indicators. So what are the state indicators? State indicators are based on data that's collected consistently across the state from districts through CalPADS, which is California Longitudinal Pupil Achievement Data System, as well as testing vendors such as TOMS, where we get our CASP data. So the state indicators, the state indicators include the academic indicator, which reports the CASP English Language Arts and Mathematics assessment separately. It reports English learner progress. They report chronic absenteeism, graduation rate, suspension rate, and college and career readiness. And again, all of this data comes from CalPADS or our testing vendors. So what are the local indicators? So state data isn't always available for some of the priority areas identified in the local control funding formula statute. So for these priority areas, the State Board of Education approved what's called the local indicators, which are based on information that districts collect locally. So there are 5 local indicators, and they include basic conditions of learning, which is priority 1. That talks a little bit about teacher qualifications and the condition of our facilities. Priority 2 is the implementation of state academic standards. So do we cover state standards? Priority 3 is parent and family engagement. Do we engage our families and our community? And then priority 6 is school climate as measured by local climate survey data. And then the 5th one is priority 7, which is access to a broad course of study. So what's required every year, I went a little bit ahead here, but districts are required to reflect annually on local indicators that are listed as part of the California School Dashboard. And each district is required to complete the self-reflection tools which are provided by the Department of Education. Now, last year, because of COVID-19, the state law suspended the reporting of state and local indicators on the 2020 dashboard. So if you go to the dashboard, you'll see it's pretty blank. It just gives you the 2020 dashboard information, just gives you information about each district, the number of students, your low-income students, the percentage of low-income students, percentage of English learners. It's pretty basic information. So you have to go back and look at 2019 and 18 data to see what the dashboard is all about. So this year, the state is going to launch the dashboard again. So the requirements for this is that the school districts have to annually measure its progress on local performance indicators based on locally available data. So in the report, you'll notice that we've got information on, our survey, all the surveys that we give. We use some of that data to talk about, to find out what our school climate's like. We look at all the courses we offer. So things like that. So it's all included in this report. Then the next thing that we're required to do is that we do need to report the results as part of a non-consent item at a regularly scheduled board public meeting, which is this evening, in conjunction with the adoption of the LCAP, because we use the California dashboard data to help us with our LCAP goals. Are we meeting our LCAP actions and our goals and actions and services? And then the third requirement is that we report the results to the public through the dashboard. So once I've reported this to you, I have 5 days to put this into the system so that when the dashboard launches in November, we'll have all of our local indicators as well as the state indicators reported. So our next steps, like I said, I'm going to upload this data into the fall 2021 dashboard. We're going to continue to analyze data from the dashboard to identify areas of strength and areas of growth. We're going to work with the school sites to continue using data to drive instruction, to promote positive climate, and to, of course, increase parent and guardian or family engagement. Some of those things we do through the our family learning series, our PTA and school events, that type of thing. So we're really going to try to continue to improve in this area, especially since COVID. Things kind of slowed down a little bit last year, but we're going to try to build that back up again. And then we're going to continue to use the data from the California dashboard to update our LCAP goals and actions. So that's what the local indicators are all about. You all should have gotten a copy of the report. And at this point, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion so that we can begin, open up the discussion or see if there's any questions. Maybe we can take the slide off if there's no additional information.
Yes.
No problem.
Yes.
Thank you, Karen. Do I have a motion to approve or to discuss, excuse me, to open up discussion? Caroline, I've got a motion. Do I have a second? Was that you, Joe? Okay, I got Joe. Thank you. Everyone else raised their hand, but I've got Caroline and Joe. Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Any questions, comments?
I have a question. Could you talk about the rating scale a little bit? I was confused about 4 is full implementation and a 5 is full implementation and sustainability. And I just didn't understand what that really meant and how we differ sustainability from just implementation.
So sustainability is we're doing this on a regular basis. So it's continual, it's ongoing. So for example, when we first started, when we adopted NGSS, we were in full implementation, but we weren't necessarily, it wasn't sustainable. Now it's kind of second nature. Everybody's using the science, the NGSS standards. It's fully implemented and we're sustaining it. Does that make sense?
Karen, Karen, you're referencing the fact that it's embedded in our systems and it's an ongoing process.
It's an ongoing thing. It's continual.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
After first year of implementation, you first have to implement something for a full year, so then you can sustain it. That's why when we say 4, that means we have implemented at least for a year, and then after that, it becomes sustainable.
So if we're seeing something that's been around for a while and it's getting a 4 rather than a 5.
It means it's not as fully, it's fully implemented, but maybe not to the caliber that we'd like it. So English language development is still ongoing. We have a program we brought in for newcomers at the 712 that just came in last year. And it's showing that it's really successful, but we're always trying to find the best ways to meet our English learners. So in talking with my English language development teachers, our general education teachers, there's still some need to look for additional resources that may meet the needs of all of our students.
Yes. If we're still making changes, if we're not 100% there yet, it's not sustainable yet. Once we are set and everything's being implemented the way we want it, then it becomes sustainable.
And these are our reflections. I run the ELD program and I've got a high standard. So, we've done an amazing job. We've got, our teachers are working incredibly hard with our English learners. Our parents are really happy. But like I said, we're always trying to think, how can we really meet those needs of newcomers, especially who really don't speak very little English? How can we make sure that they're meeting standards and that we're continually and helping them to grow and advance as students? So like I said, we brought in a new program at the 712 last year, and it's shown to be pretty successful this past year.
And not to answer your question with analogies or just examples, Josh, but for example, the Challenge Success Initiative, we're into, I believe, year 7 at the high school, and you have, everyone on staff understands the SPACE acronym. They can define it. They can explain it to you. The programs and the teams have gone up multiple times. Whereas at the elementary, it's a newer concept. People are still looking for, trainings. They're looking for programmatic approaches to really implement it or embed it in our elementary students' life. And so it's just, I think, about the level of familiarity and the way it's permeated the school culture. So, and you have to sort of assess, are you doing the work? And then is the work fully embedded in your actions and services and just part of who you are as an organization?
Thank you, Wendy. Joe?
Yeah, when I think of dashboard, I think it also kind of gives you a look on trends over time. You know, is a certain indicator going forward, stepping back? It's a little bit hard right now reading this, that it's kind of a picture. And it's hard to, as a board member looking, hey, year on year, we're making progress in certain areas. And I don't know if there's a way in the future to think through, like, color coded, it's trending green, it's going up, it's going down. Something that might be a little helpful when you put scorecards and dashboards out. It's just the picture is good, but I can't tell if we're a 5 or we a 4 last year. Are we sustaining at excellence, or where these opportunities? Because really dashboards are for exception based, right? You're supposed to zero in on where you need to be working on things and how we can help as a board enable you guys to, if there's something we have to firm up and help mobilize to make happen. But is there another representation of this that shows it in color? I thought we saw some earlier dashboard versions that did have more of a.
Right, the state data has the colored versions, but we have no state data from 2020. So we're going to move forward and have those again, and it's color coded like a speedometer, and we show the data will come across as whether we've increased or decreased from the previous year. Now, I'm not sure what that will look like moving forward this year, because we have no data. Nobody has data for the 2020 dashboard, but we have data from the previous years. And, you know, we've done quite well in looking at the data from one year to the other. We've done well in some areas and we've dropped a little bit in others, but again, they're very minor drops in growth. So, so we track that really closely. Again, it almost feels like we're starting from scratch this year because we don't have 2020 data. But I can most certainly look at this. This is the local indicators report. So there is no color coded of anything. The state is the only one that color codes their data. This is our reflection, and we upload it as in a narrative and in these tables, these charts.
Tables, yeah. Well, I'm not asking you to course correct right now, but if you're thinking about in the future and you're presenting it, maybe there's a way that instead of an X, that it's in the box, but it's with it's showing us some context as a trend. Yeah.
You
And
bring
in
up
the
a really good point. I'm sorry, Karen, but you bring up a really good point. But if I remember correctly, we will see some of those in November when we have it visible to us. And I'm assuming it's going to come back to give us an update.
You'll see that through our state data. The local data, in the past, actually, the tables are new. Oh, you could choose whether you wanted to write down each standard, and if you fully met it, level 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5. This year they gave us chart, and there was an option to write as well. Now there's not the option to write to clarify things. So it hasn't changed much in this format, but you will see the color coded charts with the state data in the fall. And I can review all of that as well at an upcoming board meeting, so we can talk about progress. We'll see what that looks like in 2021. Dan, did you have a question?
I had 2 questions about our basic services category. The first is the instance of a facility not meeting the good repair standard, which appears to have been things hanging from the lighting and the light fixtures and air fresheners at Palmcrest. I assume that's been fixed and we don't have that problem anymore?
I assume so, yes. This report was done in October 2020, and it's brought to the attention of the principal as well. And that is something that, we work to correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we just should verify that? Just make sure that we don't have that problem, especially with all the work going on at Palmcrest. I don't know if it's something Mark can just check, make sure it's been fixed.
Right. And we oftentimes are going through rooms looking for things hanging from ceilings and air fresheners just for fire safety reasons and all. So those are part of the walkthroughs as well. And they also tend to set off the alarms in the middle of the night. So. Yeah.
And then the other one was the question just about the misalignment of staff. Has that also been resolved?
So our English language, our CLAD certificate, yes, that's been resolved, because when this report was done, the one teacher did get the CLAD credential. There are 2 teachers who have 1 class out of section, and I don't think that can be changed because of the credentialing. It's Anais, maybe you can help me with this. It's a course that requires a different credential. We don't have the teachers for it.
Which subject is it? You don't have to give the teacher's name.
It's kind of hard not to give the teacher's name because it's, you know, sometimes it's part of the CTE program. And so there, yes, I'm not quite sure where we are with that, but I'm working with the HR to try to make sure we have all the credentialing we need. But like I said, the one teacher is fully credentialed for the regular classes, but then there are other classes that are part of the wheel, part of CTE, that the teacher doesn't necessarily have the correct credential, but can teach the subject.
Well, once in a while, we are allowed to, for 1 year, make an exception to make it fit the wheel and have our 7-8 students be supported with the electives that they need. If the teacher has taken other courses that support that specific elective, but they per se don't have a credential in that specific area. But they have taken enough courses, we have sent them to trainings, and they feel really comfortable teaching it. So off the top of my head, I can't picture exactly who that is, so I can give even more specific information. But when it comes to CTE and electives, that's usually the case.
But we do have ratios that we have to meet as a district, and we are well within those ratios. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is just the certification and the credentialing ratios, correct?
Yeah, and there are means by which you can have everybody with a temporary permit. So we have a PIP and a STIP. Deborah applies for all of those on a yearly basis if we have someone who's misassigned in a single course. You can also, for example, if you're a teacher at a high school, you can teach one course outside of your credential if it's a PE course. So sometimes you have somebody who is misassigned, but that is permitted by CTCC. And so everything that they're looking at is addressed through either one of the provisional credentials or a caveat within the teacher credentialing program, or you have a year to, if someone is outside of their credential, a year to have them engage in coursework to demonstrate proficiency.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Anything from public? Jamie, I'm sorry. Is this minus 10 points now for you?
Yes. Checking right now. Nothing for this item.
Thank you so much. All right. If there's nothing else, I want to thank you all for this work, and we'll move on to the next item. And I do look forward to seeing once everything is updated and the state updates its reports to see. And you were saying November of 2021, we should be able to see this information.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'd be happy to come back and share that.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Karen. Thank you for the work. And thank you, everyone, for the questions. We'll move on to item number B. This has an asterisk on it. This is a commitment of funds balances, resolution 21-2021. And we are being asked to potentially discuss and adopt this resolution to commit funds. So if I could, Mark, I think that's going to go to you.
Yes.
Let me hear the description or discussion, the presentation, and then we'll open it up.
Yes, this is what I mentioned in the budget report, and the commitment of funds is an action the board can take. It's passing a resolution designating funds for a very specific purpose. In this case, it's textbooks. There are 3 levels of funds. Restricted funds tend to be dollars we get from the state or the feds that are very specific, such as special ed dollars, or many of the CARES Act dollars are restricted. While they are part of our cash balance at the end of the year, they don't count as our ending fund balance or go towards the 3.5%. Assigned funds at the other end of the spectrum are funds that we put into a pile with a specific purpose, but they're not restricted. They're not designated only for that. They can be changed if needed. The committed funds are right between the restricted from the feds or the state and the assigned that we determine. The committed funds are designated by the board for specific purposes. Over the years, we have put aside money for textbooks, and we have kept it in assigned. We have almost $1.4 million that's accumulated. That would be for a couple of adoptions. Adoptions tend to be about $500,000, I believe, on ease. And so what we'd like to do of that $1.4 million is commit $1 million of it so that it's there safe for the next upcoming adoptions. The $400,000 while still remaining assigned to textbooks, we need cash flow to purchase things. Sometimes we do small adoptions for a high school class. Sometimes we buy workbooks. We do get some funds from the lottery textbook monies that are specifically for replacements each year for the consumable materials. So of that 1.4 million, I'm recommending that we set aside and commit by board action the $1 million to protect that for the specific use of textbooks. And if there's any desire to change that, the board will need to take action to do that.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the resolution to commit the funds for a specific purpose identified as textbooks. Joe?
I make the motion.
Motion, thank you so much.
I make
Do
the
have a
motion
second?
for resolution 21-2021.
Thank you so much.
I'll second.
You'll second, Caroline. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Hold on one second. I just have a chat item I need to double check. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and come back to that in just a moment. We've got a motion and a second. And any questions, comments, discussions?
Mark, what's the advantage? I understand the idea that it becomes untouchable dollars, but if we sort of have said that it's going to be untouchable, what's the advantage of officially making it untouchable? Is there stuff that we're not seeing?
It creates it as almost a restricted fund. So again, it's in our cash balance, but it's not dispensable as emergency funds unless the board were to take action to take it out. So it actually will not count towards our reserves or our
Exactly.
3.5%. So it can, if we need to, we can remove it from committed funds. In Fund 17, we have the same thing. Most of that lease interruption fund is set aside committed because if we needed an emergency where there's some major lease repairs or a default on one of the leases, we can access it, but we don't want to access it for other reasons. So we commit it and it kind of takes it off the table for other expenditures, but it also takes it off the table for our kind of cash liquidity, the accessible cash, if you will.
But
That's
there's
my
no,
understanding, Mark, that one of the big benefits, right, was the lever with the reserves, right?
Yes, it's still within our funds. It's within our purview, your purview, to change that or modify that as needed, but it does kind of take it off the table as not liquid cash.
and there's no time frame with which we have to spend it. We don't have to spend it in this
No.
year.
It'll remain committed. The commitments that we did shortly after I got here, I think it was 2015, for some of the STRS and PERS expenditures, as well as the Fund 17 lease interruption fund, remain in a committed status because we've never taken action to move them out of that status.
Thank you. Anything else? Any public comment for this agenda item?
No, there are not.
If there's no more discussion, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote or call the question to adopt Resolution 21-2021 to commit funds for specific purpose primarily discussed as textbooks at this point. If I can have all in favor? I see Dan's hand, my hand, Caroline, Joe, and Josh. Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on. I just want to come back. Jamie, did I answer your question?
Yeah, Nairi wanted to make sure the last item didn't need to have a vote. So we just wanted to double check the local indicators was just a discussion item because I thought it was supposed to be board approval. I just want to
I have it listed as a review and discussion.
review discussion.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just a review and discussion, but thank you. I'm glad you're double
Yeah.
checking. Thank you, Nairi.
That was Nairi. Yeah.
Definitely keep me in check.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
all. All right, moving on to item number C is an update on LCUSD reopening progress for the 2021-2022 school year. Wendy, I know this is yours, but as you're talking, I'm just going to put myself on mute, run and get water and come back.
No problem.
So I'm not leaving.
So
Okay.
thank you. Jamie's going to share the slide deck, but I just wanted to say that it's really exciting to be able to begin to look at reopening in the 2021-2022 school year. Our metrics and indicators are much more positive, and we want to just assure our public that we are proceeding with all of our planning to fully reopen. And I think that this slide deck will give you good basic information. We are operating in this presentation from everything that we know, the most current information from the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. That information hasn't been updated since June 14th, We, districts and superintendents across the state are eagerly awaiting for updated guidance because we know things will change by the time we present this again in July, and they'll even change by the time we present this again in August. And so we're going to open up with the first slide that just once again reminds us of how we have framed reopening for the last 16 months or so. So for everything that we're making decisions on, our student, staff, and family safety is our #1 priority. We do have high expectations, and we will be presenting the most rigorous and robust educational program, along with all of the social and emotional supports that are needed by our students, many of whom did not attend in-person instruction throughout the course of last school year. We know that the opportunities for success are great because we experienced great success last school year, and we intend to build upon that success. We are very phased in our approach, which allows us to learn and grow from every stage in our planning and adjust as needed. We do ask for people's patience and flexibility. I would love to be presenting a slideshow tonight that was cast in stone and could give you all of the exact details for reopening, but we have to be flexible because information comes when it comes, and we adjust and respond accordingly. Situational awareness on COVID-19 does remain critical. I know if people are listening to the news, there is some concern about updated variants that are out there, and those, we will, I'm still attending the weekly briefings on the COVID-19 situation, and we are bound by the public health orders, and we will continue to follow their directives. But we're grateful to all of our teachers, staff, parents, administrators, and especially our students, and we are joyfully looking forward to the 21-22 school year for our full return to in-person instruction. So without further ado, let's take a look at, these are the topics that I will briefly present on tonight. We met as a leadership team last week. We had a retreat. These were the main topics that as administrators, we were engaged with planning for with regards to the reopening. So daily schedules, the health protocols, some will adjust, some will go away, some will be new, campus routines, classroom setups, critical times that we haven't experienced throughout the past year, recess, nutrition, lunch, and PE. What will our visitor policy look like? What will be the options for anyone who, and it's a very small minority here, but who for medical or health reasons really needs to consider remaining virtual? What about in-person events? A lot of those we had to forego last year, and how do we plan to approach those at this point? And then what will be our cleaning protocols? So like I said, right now we're really taking sort of the 10,000 view look at all of this because we don't have information that we know will be updated. But this is all based on, like I said, the June 14th data. That's the most recent version of our Appendix T1 protocols. So next slide. Daily schedule. So we do know we're in control of our own calendar. School will reopen on August 16th. We will reopen with our traditional 5-day per week in-person bell schedule. To remind people, because we have to update our websites, the start time for early birds is 8:10. For late birds, it's 9:10. And for our 4th through 6th graders at the elementary sites, it's 8:10. With corresponding dismissal times, early birds at 1:50, late birds at 2:50, and our 4th through 6th graders at 2:50 p.m. At the high school, we are ahead of the curve with having implemented late start quite a few years ago. So we start at 8:30. Dismissal time on a regular 6-period day is 3:14, and our block days, as a reminder, is 3:13. So very specific there, but that's the schedule that we will be returning to. The next slide. Health protocols. So again, this is all based on 614 Public Health T1 orders and guidance. So all students and staff are required to wear masks on campus according to the most current as exists health guidance when indoors. So alternative this is a shift that's taken place recently. Alternative protective strategies for IEP students with medical reasons when they cannot tolerate a mask can be identified so that those students don't have to be excluded. But that's very specific for students with IEPs who have medical reasons where they cannot wear a mask. We anticipate at this point that for indoors, in person, everyone will be masked. Just for example, I wanted to share with you that right now here at the district office, because we're still open, CDPH guidance for K-12 schools indicates that vaccinated and unvaccinated employees in K-12 settings are still required to wear masks. And so we're in a K-12 setting. And so even though all of, I'd say, without much doubt, all of the adults here at the district office have been fully vaccinated, we are all wearing masks outside of our individual offices. So we can anticipate that for students. Now we may see that the guidance changes and elementary students may be in masks because the vaccine isn't available to them. And we may see some, changes with regard to 7-12 mask wearing. But at this point, all students will be masked indoors. Any kind of bus transportation with our sports programs or our field trips, bus transportation is considered indoors and masking is required. Also related to health protocols, school sites are still required to have an exposure management plan. So if a student comes to school and if perhaps the symptoms haven't manifested or a parent has inadvertently forgotten to engage in the morning health screener at home, if a student presents with symptoms, they will be sent to the health clerk or the district nurse. We still have, with our exposure management plan, have to have isolation rooms. If a student is symptomatic, we will continue to do contact tracing. If a student is an employee is unvaccinated and they test positive, there will be requirements for quarantining. And we will still have testing available through Valencia branch labs for all exposed individuals within the school who have been symptomatic and where there's been an exposure. So if you look at this, the exposure management plan is very, very much the same as when we left school at the end of May. Isolation rooms, contact tracing, quarantine required for exposed unvaccinated employees and students, and access to testing that will be implemented for anyone who is symptomatic. Next slide. Campus routines. We have right now on-campus temperature taking and on-campus check-in where you answer all of those questions. We're not planning for those, but we are planning for the health screener. The most important thing that we can do is keep our students home when they are symptomatic or present as ill with any illness, but especially with the symptoms that are related or identified as COVID-related symptoms. So the health screener will be in place. We'll be asking parents TK through 12 to engage in the health screener at home. This will allow us not to do the check-ins or temperature taking when your child arrives to campus, but fidelity to the health screeners will be emphasized. The two ways that we can keep from any kind of spread is through hand washing frequently and mask wearing. So at this point, given the protocols, hand washing will remain a priority. Our elementary teachers will schedule as they're able regular hand washing, definitely regular reminders to wash your hands, and secondaries just regular reminders. Even though we won't have the protocols when you arrive on campus with the temperature taking, hand sanitizer at various entry points to campus will be readily available. If someone isn't able to wash their hands, it's really important to continually hand sanitize or wash your hands. Any student presenting with symptoms, as I just said on the last slide, will engage in the exposure management protocols. Campus supervisors will be deployed and they will be encouraging physical distancing in the hallways. And we are awaiting further guidance on lockers because of physical distancing outdoors being something that we really want to encourage. Lockers tend to sort of be a trigger for congregating. And so the high school has yet to assign lockers, and we'll be looking for updated protocols to make that decision. Classroom setups. So we are currently engaged in getting all of our classrooms ready to welcome students for a really exciting return. There is still a 3 feet distance between student chairs, strongly recommended. That happens somewhat naturally with individual student desks. And so you will see in most of our classrooms the use of individual student desks and configurations that support that recommendation of the 3 feet of distancing. Current public health protocols and Cal OSHA emergency temporary standards require that there's 6 feet of distance, and this is currently a requirement, 6 feet of distance between the teacher workstation and the student desks. So as we set up our classrooms, the teacher workstation is physically distanced by 6 feet from the nearest student desks. And that's to the extent possible, but we're pretty much able to set up all of our classrooms for that. Classrooms ratios, as they were in May, are really dependent on the size of the classroom and how many desks and students you can arrange for the 3 feet of social distancing. And so most of our classrooms are large enough that we simply revert to our collective bargaining agreement ratio limits, which are 22 and under for TK through 3. We try to have between 27 and 30 for 4th, 5th, and 6th. And then at the high school, our contractual limits are 36-1. Now, some of our classrooms at the high school are small, and so they're being very mindful of the master schedule so that any class that gets assigned to one of those smaller classrooms, those classes are capped. And so they won't reach the collective bargaining ratio limits, but they'll be dependent upon the classroom sizes. Next slide. So we haven't had a lot of experience with especially lunch, but for recess and nutrition, those will be outdoors. When you're outdoors, right now, the recommendations are that you can, when you're eating and drinking, not be masked. But there is a recommendation that as much distancing as possible is sort of encouraged and promoted with campus supervision. So recess and nutrition will be outdoors, and we will be encouraging our students when they're unmasked because they're eating or drinking to maintain some of that social distancing. Same thing with lunch. We are going to have campus supervisors promoting social distancing. Our elementary principals are all engaged in working on a 3 lunch periods so that the number of classes in the space are smaller. So the 6 feet of social distancing is easier to manage. We do recognize the challenges for Palm Crest because of the construction. So we're working very closely with Principal Pack on that. Supervising adults may be assigned to work with different groups. And so you won't have your paraprofessionals or your para ones who are supervising at lunch and resource assigned to specific cohorts. They can be assigned to multiple cohorts. And really the idea of cohorting is now phasing out because we are able to have students mix, but we're encouraging the social distancing. Cafeteria offerings will adjust with the health protocols. So right now we we know we can do grab and go, but the grabbing and the going would still be on campus. And then we're also looking at things like individual servings. You won't likely see salad bars, anything where there is mixing or things like that. So the food services department will be working with Mark Evans and with Jamar, who is our food services manager, on preparing the types of food that work with the protocols and the recommendations. PE classes, when they're outdoors and allow for physical distancing, don't require masks. If there's a PE class that's going to take place indoors, masks are required. Currently, the entire sports and athletics program that we developed was under the youth sports protocols, and the youth sports protocols are no longer in effect. And so, pretty much the standard is if you're outdoors and you're able to maintain some sort of physical distancing, you don't need to wear a mask. And then we have seen that in competition, especially when there's heavy breathing and masks tend to block that, you may forego the wearing of a mask. So we will, again, I'm sure we'll get more detail And right now, absent a youth sports protocol, we're just following the generic guidelines for encouraging social distancing, and when you're outdoors, masking is recommended but not required. School policies shall all promote physical distancing wherever possible, and this also is in effect for locker rooms. Virtual learning options. So this is a small population. We'll probably survey again sometime late July, potentially early August. But based on our May 2021 survey, there were only 26 students whose parents responded that they were interested in the distance learning option. Right now, we're awaiting trailer bill language, and trailer bills are what get attached to things like the budget, and they give more details on specific items or bill topics or assembly topics. And one of the things that all of the virtual learning program is being tied to our independent study program. Independent study has been typically what we're used to when a student is absent or they're on a vacation or they're maybe a student actor and they go on set. An independent study provision allows them to get work packets, and then we can still consider them enrolled and attending. However, there's talk that they're going to sort of beef up these independent study guidelines so that they more resemble in a closer fashion some of the learnings that we had from distance learning and virtual instruction. So we're waiting for all of these details. None of those have been submitted yet. There's talk that there will be requirements if you have virtual instructional programs, requirements to ensure daily live participation and some level of synchronous instruction at least once per week. And then there's some talk that documentation of daily participation and weekly engagement of students will be required. So what we're thinking right now is we have the Apex Learning Academy for students in grades 9 through 12. That will likely be our option for students who are in those grades who elect to be virtual. For our elementary students, we will have to look for the details on independent study and likely assign some FTE, some teacher supervision or guidance to ensure live daily participation and some level of synchronous instruction. But we don't want to incur the expense or the assignment of that employee's time until we know what the provisions are, but we do anticipate those within the next 2 weeks. Next slide, Jamie. Thank you. Visitors, we can't wait to return to sort of the joyful presence of our campus volunteers. The current protocols state that visitors to the school, other than parents of enrolled students, are limited to those who are essential for the school's operation. So there is a nice caveat that other than parents of enrolled students. So we're hoping and we think that we'll be able to have our parent volunteers scheduled according to appointments. They would log in with the main office. The visitor log, according to the protocols, must include name, phone number, and email. That's part of our regular practice anyway, so no changes there. But that we anticipate classroom volunteers with a schedule, sort of an appointment or signups, will be able to check in, follow those procedures, and then they would be in classrooms as we once knew. But the nuance there is because they would be indoors, they would be masked, even if they were fully vaccinated. Next slide. In-person events. So we miss things like back to school nights, spring-a-ma-jig, the Halloween haunt, all of those wonderful things. So currently we don't have any guidance on these, but we anticipate that in-person events, the first one that would be on the docket would be back to school night, will be permitted. When adults visit the classrooms, because they would be indoors, vaccinated or unvaccinated, masks would be required. Our principals, when we have those large group assemblies prior to the parents going into classrooms, they're typically in the multi-purpose rooms or in the cafeteria at LCE. If they're in the auditorium at the high school, all of our principals are working on having these large group presentations outdoors. So we were a little worried about the high school, but Principal Cardinal and Gold are very, very confident that they can deliver a really compelling, interesting presentation in Spartan Stadium. So you can anticipate that. There was some talk that we might do this virtually, but that gets a little cumbersome with doing some virtual at home and then traveling to the site. So just anticipate that the large group gatherings would be in the outdoor venues on all of our campuses. And then we go to the next slide, which is our cleaning protocols. There'll be cleaning schedules that we're currently working on. They'll be established and posted at all of our school sites, and they're designed to avoid both under and overuse of the cleaning products. Just as we did in May and throughout our in-person instruction last year, common areas and frequently touched objects will undergo, regular wipe downs, and our custodians will be on a route. They'll be cleaned at least once a day and more frequently as resources allowed. Teachers are also, per the protocols, students are allowed to bring wipes, and teachers are allowed to have wipes in the classroom, and students, it's fine if they wipe down their areas as appropriate. Currently, the protocols dictate that water fountains would be eliminated. So we would have students be bringing water with them onto campus. And then the enhanced cleaning, what we've been calling the disinfecting or the deep sanitizing, would all be done once a day after school when students are not on campus. And that would reset for the next day and allow adequate time to let this classroom space or the instructional space air out before the start of the next school day. And we're getting close to being done. This is the catch-all, the other details. We will have some meetings next year that will be in Zoom fashion. That'll be based on the determination of the groups or the participants, what's most convenient. But overall, they'll be mostly in person and they'll be indoors. So with the current protocols, people will be wearing masks. We're currently awaiting guidance on the PSAT and the SAT protocols. The current guidance that exists right now has all of those tests with ratios that basically put us at 30% room capacity. So we anticipate that will change, but this is the information as we currently have it. You think about our library settings and the IRC. So students will be allowed to access those indoor settings, but masks will be required, and we will be promoting and encouraging social distancing. Field trips. This is all tentative, but currently we are planning for Valley Forge. We're planning for Pally Mountain. There are many field trips at the high school that are being planned for, but currently the district protocol or position is that we are not planning for any international travel for the 2021-22 school year. Electives, these have been top of mind for many families. So specifically band, choir, cooking, and theater. Again, the 614 protocols, the June 14th protocols, they indicate that brass instruments, wind instruments, and singing all are required to be outdoors. They are required to be at 8 feet of social distancing, and theater can have, when they're just engaged in sort of physical movement, a 6 foot of social distancing, but an 8 foot requirement when students are speaking and enunciating in the drama. Travel recommendations. So if you leave the state of California, these are recommendations, but the current recommendations are when you return you have a viral test 3 to 5 days after travel, and you stay home and self-quarantine for a full 7 days. If you have the viral test and you test positive, then that self-quarantine is for 10 days. Again, that is a recommendation, and that recommendation applies to travel outside of the state of California. So there's a lot. I know it will change, so I appreciate people's patience, but we did want to share with the public what we know now, and I would invite any discussion or questions from the governing board.
Thank you, Wendy, for that report and that information. I think it's imperative for us to begin to look at it as we get closer to the beginning of the school year. Any questions, comments? We are asked to review, discuss, and provide direction if we choose to do so. Josh.
I have a few questions thoughts, but they're kind of spread throughout the document. So maybe I'll just kind of pepper you with them and we can.
That's good.
talk. One of the things that I think I noticed was some of the stakeholder meetings we held throughout the year actually seemed to thrive on Zoom. I'm thinking about like the town halls and some of the larger committee meetings. And I'm wondering if you're considering not just moving everything back to in person, but really being considerate about how we adjust some of these meetings. They may actually be better on Zoom.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, one of the forethought that the board had with my goals was, as we identify best practices, to ensure that we find ways to maintain those best practices. And so, for example, we are part of the 5-Star Coalition, and we met last Thursday, and it's 5 districts, superintendent and 2 board members from every district, and it's been more convenient for that group to meet virtually. And so we're going to continue with all of our subsequent meetings, except for occasion where we need to like visit a site or do something, or get together if for a holiday, so that will all remain virtual. So we will have the same capacity to pick and choose. I talked with Dr. Ihori from Special Education Department. There may be some IEPs where it's more convenient for a family to have that IEP be via Zoom. If we have, staff meetings occasionally, the principals may elect to hold those via Zoom. We had for our family learning series, far better turnout when we were holding those events via Zoom. So we will seek and look forward to returning to in-person gatherings and events. But for many of them where it best serves the needs of the group, we'll continue with Zoom.
Great. Okay, so another random question. Do we have guidance on policies for outdoor student time that isn't necessarily, PEs? For instance, recess, passing periods, in terms of mask wearing? I know we're saying, you don't need to wear a mask during PE, but are we, what is the current guidance on that sort of time?
The current guidance is that you're outdoors, so masking is not required, but that social distancing is recommended and that the school should have policies encouraging social distancing. So how I envision this is that we will have an increased number of, supervisors. There'll be a lot of reminders to students. In passing periods, especially at the high school, kids are on the go. And if we don't reopen the lockers, there won't be a lot of congregating. They'll, get to their, next class. We all need that mask break. So those are probably good times to take it down off your face before you enter back into the classroom. But there'll be adults watching so that if kids aren't eating and aren't drinking where you can't be masked, if they're just socializing, reminding kids that if you're socializing outdoors and you don't have your mask on, spread it out. If you're socializing and you're close together, put the mask on.
Great. Okay, sorry, 2 more questions. Totally have nothing to do with each other. We talked about no water fountains. Have we considered replacing some of the water fountains with water bottle fillers? Are those allowed? Would it be a way for students to be, refilling a personal water bottle?
Yes, I believe so, Mark, but you probably have.
They did allow us to use the water bottle fillers, and we have some at each campus, but not a whole bunch, and they're not all conveniently located depending on what classes you're in. But yeah, those are possibilities. They're challenges because they usually require electricity as well as the plumbing, and those two are not always in the same spot. So
but for the water fountains, because sometimes they could fill bottles, sometimes not, but they're so conducive to, taking a drink, they'll typically be bagged.
Okay. So I mean, if it's possible to replace some of those with water bottle fillers, that would be.
We can definitely look at that within the next 2 months.
Last thing, the PSAT, SAT protocols. I just wondered about that because I know we had a lot of families and a lot of students that were having trouble getting slots throughout the year. And there was some talk of, is it possible to take our spaces because they're so limited, but primarily focus them on LCUSD student spaces? Is that something we can consider, something we can do, or just wondering about that?
Yeah, so I can get more information from Jason Ito at the high school, but we had a lot of challenges with the College Board, and a lot of people were very upset with LCUSD, and it was completely out of our control. College Board was shutting down testing sites. They were randomizing seats so that you had a seat, they had your money, and then all of a sudden your seat was taken and assigned to someone else. And they weren't guaranteeing you a speedy refund. So parent frustration was at the max, and we were totally unable to do anything about it. Jason finally built a really good connection with some of the higher ups at the College Board and was able to finagle us with a few seats here and there. We can control the seats at our site if the test is given in our school day. So we're looking at providing some of those, but we also are, when we do that, we're interrupting the instructional day. And so we have to balance that with just, getting back, getting the learning going, the importance and the preciousness of the instructional time. But we're looking at any ways that we can do sort of a twofold objective. One is to offer those tests, follow the protocols and requirements, and however we can, as possible, secure seats that stay for our kids. And that may be a testing session or two within the school day, just because that gives us control over those seats. If we do it on the weekend, we lose that control.
Yeah, I was one of the parents who experienced the frustration of having, the testing evaporate multiple times, and it was incredibly frustrating.
My apologies to all the families that experienced that. And it really isn't passing the buck. It is the fact that it was completely College Board, and it was a mess.
That's it. Those were all my many expert questions.
My turn with some random questions.
Okay, thanks, Caroline.
With cold and flu season coming up, how are we going to adjust for that? And with more absences, are we going to be able to live stream instruction for those kids that are at home, or?
So, couple of things there. We are going to have to really, really be working in partnership, as we have for the past, well, for always, but more intensely for the past year and a half, with our parents. I know how stretched families have been. I know that, sometimes in the past, prior to COVID, it's been easier to say, that sniffly, runny nose, it's going to go away. Here, take an aspirin, take an allergy tablet, go to school. But if we're seeing symptoms, we are really going to need for families to keep students home. That will be the most direct route for us to not experience having to implement our exposure management plan, not contact trace, not shut cohort downs, not require or request that students, quarantine or self-isolate. But cold and flu season is going to be tricky but one of the things we saw that with the masking, which we're currently planning on, there was far less transmission of just the typical non-COVID cold. So to your second question, we learned a lot. We got very much, better with very much better. That's good language. So I'm going to revisit my grammar, and then I'm going to say that we got much more tech savvy. And part of what happened with that tech savvy is that teachers became increasingly comfortable with that recording and that live streaming. So we are probably going to, my sense is, revisit that at the table. That would be a working condition. We would have to bargain it. But I think that there's an openness from the part of teachers, because we had such a positive experience, and it would really be a learning loss mitigation or an achievement in best practices if we now had the situation where a student was absent but not relegated to packets and read this and answer these questions, but actually able to, virtually or, via a recording, participate in the instruction. So that is a definite goal on the part of district staff to try to implement as a great practice, and to try to see what options we have to work that into the collective bargaining agreement with LCTA.
Thank you. Next question is enrichment at the elementary schools. Wasn't mentioned. Is that all coming back? Drama for the 6th grade play, choir?
Drama teacher. We hired a drama teacher. We have all three of our music teachers have left us. So we have all 3 music positions posted. They used to be 3.75-hour positions. They are now 5-hour positions. We are actively recruiting those. Those specials are part of the unique experience of our elementary students, and we can't wait to have those back on campus and in person.
I only had those.
Thank you, Caroline. Anyone else? Okay, there's no need to take action on this. This really was an opportunity to just get an update, and I will look forward, as will everyone, look forward to a July update as well.
Yes, and we will have one of these updates at every single meeting. And if we have pertinent news or fast-paced news, we'll call a special.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everyone, for the participation. Let's move on to our next agenda item, which is the governing board of LCUSD determining, or it's actually an information item in reference to measure LC parcel tax. Mark, I think I'm going to send this over.
Can I interrupt for a second? My apologies, but Jamie, did you have a comment?
Yes.
Just no public comments. Just wanted to get it on the record.
I
Yes.
was going
You were so great, Kaiser. Yeah.
I missed it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for calling it and checking on and keeping me in check again. I appreciate it. Thank you. So the next item is the update. It's an informational item. We are not having a vote. So Mark, I'm going to pass this on to you.
Yes, the parcel tax measure that was the resolution by the board in December of 2019 to put the parcel tax on the ballot called for a parcel tax that was ongoing with an inflation index. And the purpose of this is to inform you of that increase. The first year did not have an increase when the parcel tax first went into effect. This is the first year it is up for an increase, and that's based on the Los Angeles, Long Beach, Anaheim annual CPI index. The language actually in the parcel tax, it says the parcel tax is not to exceed $450 per parcel in fiscal year 2021 and adjusted annually thereafter for inflation by the change in the consumer price index for the Los Angeles metropolitan area not to exceed 3% annually. Working with our municipal advisor, Adam Bauer at Fieldman Rollup, and getting this information, we came up with a 1.5% increase for this year. And that was the intended plan for the parcel tax increase. And I just wanted to make that statement in the public meeting so that people would be aware of it. The impact on the parcel tax from $450 would go up to $456.75 for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you, Mark. Let me go ahead and open it up to questions. And I know we have some public comment. Dan.
Actually, I think maybe it would make sense to just go ahead with Mr. Haxton's comments because that's my concern also. So I don't know, can we just go ahead and start with those?
If everyone's okay with it, we'll go ahead and Jamie, go ahead and read the public comments and then we'll come back to the board discussion.
Thank you. We have, they're short, but entered separately just for the record, but 2 comments from David Haxton, community member, and he writes, the inflation adjustment being proposed by staff is the difference in the CPI from December 2019 to December 2020. The CPI doesn't move smoothly from month to month, but instead it varies considerably. So to see the actual trends is more accurate to take the average of months. For example, CalPERS averages all 12 months of 2019 and compares it to the average of all 12 months in 2020 to get its inflation increase. Another example is Social Security, which averages July, August, and September of 2019 and compares it to the average of July, August, and September of 2020. By using only the December CPI, there are some years when your inflation increase will be larger than the actual and other years when it will be smaller than actual. Putting all your eggs in one basket of December is not good. He continues, another problem with December 2019 as your base CPI for your inflation factor is that the bond was approved in March 2020. So your base CPI should actually be no earlier than March 2020. My suggestion is that you average the CPIs for March, April, and May of 2020 and compare them to the CPIs of the average of March, April, and May of 2021. CPIs are released around the 13th of each month, so you should be able to do this calculation in mid-June every year. That way you calculate the inflation increase for the next year. It will set the precedent for how it will be done every year in the future. So you should do this correctly tonight.
Oh, I think my comment is that I think Mr. Haxton is correct that whatever we set this at will set the precedent for the future. So whatever method we use for calculating the increase in the consumer price index will be something that'll be staying with the district. If you look at the consumer price index, it has significantly gone up over the last few months because of what is driving a lot of it is the cost of fuel, which has gone up, and energy costs, as well as things like price of vehicles and stuff. So I think that in the interests of the district, we really should be looking at the most recent increase in the consumer price index. And to Mr. Haxton's point, I guess in the long run, it sort of averages out. If you pick December to December, it's the same thing as if you pick any other 2 months over the long term. And we probably will be maxed out at the 3% anyway. But in looking at the most recently released consumer price index for our area, it would be 3.9% if we look at the most recent one, which would mean we'd be looking at an increase of 3% instead of 1.5%. So I just think we should take his comments and kind of figure out which way we want to go with it, since it will be something we're locking in.
I agree. This is where we kind of set the precedent of how this will be determined. So if you want to look at it a different way, I can do that. We'd have to bring it back July 13th in order to get it to the county in time to process for the new tax rolls.
And
I thought it was when you opened up, Mark. Sorry, Dan.
To Mr. Haxton's other comment, I might answer your comment also, Joe, is that the tax year goes starting July 1st. So whatever percentage we determine will show up on the tax bills that are for the fiscal year starting July 1st, but the first payment isn't off until, what is it, October, November, something like that. So the tax bills will be prepared based on the number that the district determines now. But it is correct that it does become effective this year because this will be the second year of the Measure LC tax on the tax bill.
Joe?
Mine was just slightly different. I thought when you open it up in your statement, Mark, you said it was an annual calculation. So I didn't know if you were pulling the month of, and because he said December, or it was a different measure that was aggregated and averaged out that you got your, because you said it was Long Beach, there was the Southern California corridor, and I thought maybe that was already pre-annualized. Is that not how it's?
That was my understanding with Fieldman Roll-Up when I worked with them, and from this chart that this was the annualized rate for that December to December. And we took it on the calendar year because property taxes are assessed at the annual year when they do the assessments. And that was my conversation with Adam Bauer. So
when is this due for us to declare it? Is it, I know this isn't informed to us. Is there a way we can double check something the next couple of days? What is the?
If you'd like me to look at a different way to calculate it, I can go back and talk with our advisor and find out, is there another way we could do it with taking averages of months? That's a possibility. I think to the point that Mr. Haxton and Mr. Jeffries raised is that this does set the precedent. So whatever we want to do, we want to do so it's consistent and it's kind of becomes institutional.
And Mark, I have a really strong confidence in Adam. And if you presented to him sort of this tenor of the conversation, I'm sure he would give you a variety, or as many options as he knew that were available. It might be at that point advantageous for the board to select from the options, or he might be able to say that this is the annualized amount and it's just consistent best practice for agencies, because we're not the only district that has passed a parcel tax with the annual inflation factor.
Correct. Yeah, this was again the recommendation I received from them. So I can go back and ask again. We just need to, and I can come back with the information on the July 13th meeting. I think we'll be within our deadline at that point in time.
I think that's the important thing, is that
I just think it's really good. I think, we wanted to bring this to the board so that, because we realized we were setting precedent, we also wanted to be completely transparent with the community, because this is, an ongoing in perpetuity increase. And so I think it's critical for the board to be fully aware of any possibilities for alternate calculations.
Hey, Mark, are there any rules or guidelines from the state on this?
None that I know. I spoke also to our attorney from the Measure LC, and there was actually no even requirement, because it's in the language, there's no requirement to have an action. That's why it's information. It's already in the parcel tax, but we wanted to make it a public notice as well as talk about the way we implement it here and going forward.
And I pulled up the original language of the Measure LC, and it doesn't define how we are to calculate the annual increase. So I think Mark's right. We can do it whichever way is appropriate, but it has to be consistent from year to year. And I guess my thinking on it is that I know a large part of the district's expenses every year are energy costs. And because a large part of our expenses are energy costs, if those energy costs are up for the last few months, it might make sense to do something like Mr. Haxton's suggesting and average the last 3 months or average the last 12 months or something, whatever. But I also agree that Adam Bauer's recommendation would carry a lot of weight.
And I think looking at this chart, even if we were going back historically, you'd see we would have hit our cap most of the years. This is a rather odd year to look at it too, actually, just because of both the spike in prices that we've had in the last several months with construction costs and lumber and things like that, as well as the kind of fall we had last spring and a year ago with the pandemic.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we are going to come back and have this as an agenda item on July 30th.
My only concern is that since it affects the parcel tax bill starting July 1st, are we pretty confident that we can make a decision, or that you can make a decision after July 1st?
Yes, we submit everything to the county like the late July. So
Okay.
Sandy usually is working on those rolls. We're processed because any exemptions have until June 30th, until tomorrow, to officially get in. So we then process those in the month of July and get those to the county end of the month, beginning of August. So, and at that point, we'll tell them what the rate is.
And it's in arrears at that point, then they're okay with that?
Well, they're getting the tax bills ready to go out for the November. So they're actually getting the assessments ready for the new tax bills that will come out in the 21-22 year.
So it's not in the rears, we're actually.
We're giving it to them, and that's what will be on the tax bill that people receive in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah, the tax bill we get later in the year goes back to July 1st. So it covers the tax year starting July 1st, but we don't.
That's my point.
Yeah. So
I'm looking at a tax bill right now, unfortunately, and it does go to Dan's point, July 1st to June 20th, 22. So if you give it to the county in August, you're technically.
Well, but they're making the bills themselves, and the 2 installments are right. November and February officially. I think the deadlines are December and April.
Okay.
So the bottom line is we are not going to be in any kind of issue, or our protocol is we're going to review, make sure that we are setting the precedent that's appropriate and comfortable for La Cañada, but still meets the county's parameters.
Yes, I mean, we'll still be able to meet their deadline to submit.
And whatever you decide will still meet the bond language.
Yes. Everyone comfortable
Parcel
with it?
tax language.
Yeah, parcel tax language, correct.
That's
Okay.
good. Let's get this right. I think Mr. Haxton's comments are appropriate.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Mark, we look forward to hearing from this
And
about this in
Madam
July.
President, can I just make one other comment about Mr. Haxton's comments? I think that we've had discussions before about what level of public comment we'll have going forward without Zoom, without in person. I think this is a good example of a sort of on the fly comment that may be something that we hadn't thought about, that I do think we should continue to encourage. I don't know if Mr. Haxton's comment was there early in the evening, or if we would have seen it if we had required it to be submitted a couple of days earlier, but it's certainly a very valuable input and something that influences our thinking process. So I think to the extent possible, it would be good for us to allow input during the meetings.
Or at least keep the forum open, so if it comes past the deadline, so you can time box the discussion, we don't lose it. And those that get submitted after the live review of the comment, we get the comments after the fact. That's what I believe that's what City Council does, right? Is that the reading of the public comment does have a cutoff, but that if you want to submit it afterwards because you have something relevant, you can still submit it, and it does get to the appropriate people. And those are mostly an exception than the rule, right, at that point.
Right, but
I could just be the teacher here, like you work until you have the deadline. So if there's a deadline, I think people behavior may change, but Dan, your point is well taken that sometimes they do really make good influences, but I also say it's also routine and procedure and how you teach people.
I kind of think back to the days when we used to meet in person, and if Mr. Haxton were sitting there, he would raise his hand and point this out to us. And I think that's a good thing to have, that people, when we're in discussion of something, if Mr. Haxton were here now with us, he might say, oh, but think about this, if you did just December, it would be better or worse or something. So I do think there's a value of having that sort of real-time feedback.
So I'm going to actually appreciate the comments, but stop the conversation because we're now kind of inching towards another agenda item that we really can't right now. But I do appreciate the comment, and I'm going to keep it. So I know we're going to come back to it because we do need to address all of these issues that have come up. So thank you, Dan. Thank you, Joe. And we'll move forward to the next agenda item. All right, everybody. The next agenda item is the California School Employees Association contract agreement. We are being asked to approve the contract. And so I am going to ask for a motion to open the discussion, then hear the presentation, and we'll move forward. So if I could have a motion to approve the contract with the California School Employees Association.
Make a motion to approve the CSCA contract agreement.
Caroline, thank you. And do I have a second?
Okay.
Josh, thank you so much. Okay, so let's move forward with the information presentation and then discussion, questions, and any public comment.
Yeah, let me introduce and explain the negotiations and the ratification. We completed negotiations with the California School Employees Association and Chapter 122, which is our chapter here in La Cañada, shortly after we did with LCTA, and the negotiations are very parallel, particularly when it comes to the fiscal issues. And then they went to the point of taking it to their leadership and then their membership to get it ratified. They finished that about a week or so ago, so we're bringing it to the board for ratification. The salary negotiations landed identically to LCTA as far as the 2% off schedule that would occur for the 2021 year and a 3.84% going on schedule for the 21-22 year. The health and welfare adjustments were the same. We had the COLA, which is part of our contract language, and we did some additional investments of district dollars to kind of even out the PPO and the HMO to make the amount covered by the district more parallel and less disparate. In addition to the salary side, we also increased the range for our employees. The cafeteria workers, our food service workers, went from a range 12 to a range 13. And then the custodians, we did some comparisons of other districts and we increased their range from a 20 to a range 21. And our lead custodians, we consolidated. We had some different ranges for the different custodians, day versus night, who were lead custodians, and we consolidated them all kind of in the midpoint from a range 25 for most of them to a range 27. The other items, there was a slight language change when it came to leaves. There's an opportunity leave, and we just kind of cleaned up some language there to make it more clear and understandable for both members and administration to better implement it. And then lastly, we added some vacation time for our long-term employees, an extra day at 25 years, and then an additional day beyond that at 30 years. And then the other items are just the official closing of the negotiations. And with CSCA, we did that as 2 years because we were actually negotiating 2021, which we didn't get to finish because of the pandemic. And then 21-22, we're back on track, staying ahead of schedule like we had been in the past.
Thank you, Mark. Any comments, questions, discussions? And Joe?
Just to comment, consistent with what we said last meeting for LCTA, I'm just really pleased that budget-wise, things have come together and stabilized, and then we're able to get to a win-win with this important partnership that we have. I think we were concerned last year, like I said last meeting, that we were in a different place. And given all the collaboration and all the efforts of the teachers and classified staff, I'm glad we're able to come to a contract that both parties could be happy with. So thanks for all their effort in helping us finish the year strong.
Thank you, Joe, for the comment. Any public comments? Okay, anything else from our board members? Then I'm going to call a question, and if I could I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor of the approval of the CSEA contract? I see everyone's hand, myself, Caroline, Joe, Josh, and Dan. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the next agenda item. This is the cabinet contract employee agreement with La Cañada Unified School District. Again, we are being asked to approve the off-schedule the contract, the cabinet contract. So if I could again have a motion to approve and then discuss and approve, and the second, and then we can begin with the presentation and discussions. So if I can have a motion.
Motion to approve the cabinet contract employee agreement for 2020, R207, 2021.
Thank you so much, Caroline. And Joe is a second. Thank you so much. Mark, do you want to lead us on? Oh, Wendy, I'm sorry.
So it's my pleasure to introduce this item. The contracted cabinet positions that this item refers to are both of our associate superintendents, Anais of Educational Services and Mark with Business and Administrative Services, and Jamie as our Chief Technology Officer. So cabinet contract positions are on a salary schedule. The salary schedule is approved by the governing board, and board has given direction that these positions receive annual increases commensurate with those granted to CMSA, KIMSA certificated staff, which is our managerial and supervisorial association. As such, those employees that I just named, it is recommended they receive a 2% off schedule payment on the 2019-2020 salary schedule, and that's off schedule. And then secondarily, receive a 3.84 increase commencing July 1st, 2021 on their salary schedule. In terms of financial impacts, the increase results in a $14,291 time cost for salaries and benefits for the 2021-22 school year, and the 3.84 on-schedule salary increase, which will commence beginning on Thursday, will be approximately $26,422 in ongoing salary and benefits. So I would request that the governing board approve this off-schedule payment and the revised salary schedule to be implemented on July 1.
Thank you, Wendy. We have a motion approval. Wendy's given us an information. Any discussion, questions, clarifications needed? Okay, any public comments?
Thanks, team, for all the hard work this year.
Absolutely.
Great job.
Oh,
Great
most
team.
definitely.
We couldn't have done any of this, or we couldn't as a district done such amazing work without your leadership. So to my cabinet, thank you.
And by the hour, we've made out very well for 20.
And got some late night Costco runs out of it too. Right, Mark?
Yeah, and some early morning Smart and Final. And we know where Valencia branch labs are for daily deliveries.
Oh my gosh, these are, I'm hoping in the near future, we can just sit back and laugh and move forward. Thank you again, everyone. So hearing no other questions or comments, I'm going to ask, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? I see myself, Joe, Caroline, Josh, and Dan. Thank you, everybody, for that vote and the approval. The next item on the agenda is the LCUSD Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This is an RFP, network of subject matter experts. This is an opportunity for us to review and discuss and recommendations. So Wendy, if I can have you begin, and then we'll move from there.
Thank you, Kaitzer. So I'm going to just deliver sort of the standard introduction and then just give a little feedback, because I took a peek at some of the public comment and wanted to just give some context there. So in terms of just general background, everyone knows, I would hope, that our Special Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion has worked really hard since December of 2020 to develop the LCUSD DEI guiding documents, as well as the LCUSD 3-year implementation plan. The first year of our LCUSD DEI 3 implementation plan will commence beginning with the 21-22 school year. And we will be initiating the identified goals, actions, and services in all of the plan areas for year one. The plan will be led and will be guided and, will be strategically implemented with the leadership of LCUSD administrators. However, we know that we are not experts in this field. And so there will be times when expertise will be required or will be desired on an as needed basis to help us be effective and efficacious in the implementation of this plan. The model proposed here was recommended by general consensus of the subcommittee that I led, which was the DEI subcommittee on site and district leadership. The idea here is to have float an RFP, a request for proposal, to find people who are network, to find people who are subject matter experts who could form a network of advisors for us. They, however, would be paid on an as-needed hourly basis. And the direction that the board would be giving tonight would be solely for the first year of implementation. So this, the maximal component of the budget is 60,000. Hours not utilized by the district shall not be invoiced or paid. So I know that some people are expressing displeasure with this idea, but I do want to say that, as we've, the board and I have worked through a lot of the DEI plan relative to my goals. And if you look at the superintendent's goals, the Diversity and Equity Inclusion Initiative falls under our Safety, Security, and Wellness Initiative. And the idea here is that we are creating school environments where every single child, and that's, whether you're a TKer or a senior, every single child comes to school and is greeted by a welcoming climate of care. Every single child has a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, a sense of personal agency. To foster that, because there's, I can't imagine that there's a parent who doesn't want that environment and that sense of self-advocacy, self-agency, self-efficacy for their child. They will be more productive. They will be more contributing. They will be more successful when they leave us and they go into this global world. They will be more able to contribute and make a difference and be successful and be all the things that parents want for their children if we're able to successfully provide those environments. It's all a part of education. We are very well versed in many parts as educational practitioners in creating and delivering on these environments. There are some components that are identified in the plan, where as your administrators, we will need some expertise or some guidance. We will seek out people who have that expertise and train in that expertise in a way that we have heard from the community is modeled and is representative for how La Cañada desires to implement this initiative. So 2 things just for consideration. One is that if you picture your child and you picture your child excited to go to school every day because they will be with friends, there won't be bullying, they will have a sense of purpose, because they feel good about who they are and what they're doing and how they express themselves, they are more engaged in their schoolwork. Their academically rigorous education comes to fruition and it has outcomes that are hugely successful because they feel comfortable in their environment. If that's something that you want for your child, what this item is asking for is that we have 4,000 kids approximately. We're asking for no more than $60,000. That would be roughly, and we very likely won't spend that. When Mark talked about the budget, there are savings that are incurred from the budget because we don't expend all of the POs. That would be how this is set up. If we don't need it, we don't use it. And we will be very mindful of how we use the resources. So at the very maximum, and I don't think it will get there, we would be asking you to create that environment of that climate of care for your child for $15 for this year. And now I know I sound a little bit like I'm on the Jerry Lewis show for the telethon, but it really is. If you break it down, it's $15 a year. And our goal is to create, our kids are coming back from 16, 18 months, some for a whole year of not having been on campus. We want to create an inclusive sense of belonging. We can do that. We're educators, we're practitioners, but there are some pieces of our plan that require more expertise than we have. For example, the last thing I want to say on my soapbox is CASEL. CASEL is the collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning. It's a very, very, very well-researched, well-respected social emotional learning group. They recently sent out a publication. I put this in for the weekend review for our governing board to review. These people who are experts in social emotional learning, which is the learning that our kids need in addition to rigorous academic learning, are asking questions like, how can social emotional learning meet the growing political, economic, and health challenges we face around the world? They go on to say, with self-awareness, educators can promote a healthy sense of identity by encouraging self-reflection and self-respect. A healthy sense of identity supports academic, social, and emotional outcomes. Goes on to say, with self-management, a focus on civic engagement can be served by emphasizing agency. Agency allows students to take intentional actions to shape their lives. Within social awareness, encouraging a sense of belonging helps to ensure that students and staff experience acceptance and inclusion, which supports schoolwork and supports engagement satisfaction and supports achievement. CASEL has expertise that we don't have. CASEL would be a very good example of us contracting on an independent service agreement on an hourly basis for a professional development or a family learning series opportunity for our community to grow and to be more assured that we are on the ball with creating these environments for our kids. And I really want people to contextualize this request with all of this in mind.
Thank you, Wendy. So just to summarize, you're asking for, and we will begin a review and discussion and hear public comment, recommendation to issue an RFP, but this would be an opportunity for us to have resources available should the district need to use the resources to support the needs of our students. And us coming back after an incredibly odd experience, for lack of a better way of saying it.
And Kaitsu, just to give one more piece of context, Joe and you served on all of these subcommittees, and the subcommittee that I led, you participated some, but Joe was there all the time. When we were beginning the bond, we did an RFP and we created a network of experts, people who had more expertise in bond and construction and all of those things. It was, Joe was brand new to the board and sat in on the interviews. We created some contracts with those vendors because we were, getting our sea legs on how to run the bond. And so this is very similar. We would create an RFP, a request for proposal. People would submit proposals. We would do interviews and we would create independent service contracts with those who fit with what we need, not one person, not anybody who's on a monthly contract where you get paid no matter what, but these people would have an hourly rate and there would be a multiple network, and we would go to those people depending upon their expertise and how it aligned with the issue at hand that we were trying to deliver on, with making sure that this work was continuing in the way that we are clearly resolved that the community wants to see this work committed to, and that's what we would do.
Okay, thank you, Josh, and then Joe, and then Dan.
So if we were say looking for instruction for teachers on how to handle sensitive topics or something like that, that would fall under this umbrella, correct? This isn't. I mean, this is a large. The scope of this is quite large.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about some of the things are identified in our plan. We're talking about restorative practices. We are talking about culturally responsive education, but we're also talking about social emotional learning. We're talking about wellness and belongingness. We're talking about bullying. We're talking about some of those things that have a, diversity or an equity or an inclusion component that we see happen on the playground that just, aren't acceptable. We're talking about teachers coming back, many of them from, a very different learning environment, who are now going to be challenged with our students whose social emotional needs might be heightened, and teachers need support and help in how to correct behaviors, how to instruct behaviors, how to social emotionally guide behaviors. And I just see that there's a high intensity of need that we're going to be faced with. And like I said, we're educators, we're educational practitioners. We know very well how to do, most of this work, but there will be areas where we need some expertise and guidance.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, well said. Let's be clear. I think with this, I like the model. I like where we ended up, and it came out of a lot of discussion of the subcommittee groups and feedback from the community. Let's be clear. You said this, Wendy. We are leading the implementation of our plan. We're not turning over the leadership to an outside consultant group to drive for us. We do recognize, though, from time to time, we may need some external horsepower to get something done, be it build a training module, an external speaker on certain content, or like to build a toolkit, like Josh said, for teachers in terms of how to handle sensitive topics. There could be a range of things, and we're setting this up ahead of time so you have that resource bucket. I also really like this because it is, like you said, on an as needed basis, and we may not use it all, okay? But it's different than what happened in the past, where we created this upfront fixed contract with a party of consultants. This is not the same thing. This is giving you a budget to pull from on a menu basis when you need it as part of the implementation of the plan. The oversight team will be given information along the way of how it's being spent and invested. So I feel pretty comfortable with it. And then finally, I feel comfortable with too, because it's also in our LCAP that we talked about earlier tonight, where stakeholders across the community declare what was important for them and where our money went in terms of our goals. And as part of wellness, DEI is in there. So I think we're being consistent through different aspects of how we build up where we spend our funds and what it's going to. So I support the model. I think it's very different to show the public that than where we were with the previous contract. We're in control as needed basis. And I feel pretty comfortable that you'll have the support you need with this model. So,
Dan, thank you, Joe.
Wendy, my question is, how exactly do you envision the RFP working? Are you going to say what type of subject matter expertise we're looking for, or is it going to be more of a general ask for the experts to tell us what areas they could help us with? And the reason I'm asking is I'm not sure we've considered all the areas we might need help in.
No, I mean, I think we would identify key target areas, and I've said some of those, that they're identified in the plan. There's also the social emotional learning, there's the wellness component, but we would identify those and word it in a way that if someone, who understands does their research, understands the needs, issues, and concerns of the district, a request for proposal is out there. So if someone has an area of expertise that might not be named, but they feel very much correlates with the initiative or the values of the district or the district's work going forward, they could put in a proposal, and then you collect the proposals, and for those that seem to match with what your desires or what your needs might be, you invite them to come interview.
So at this point, let me go ahead and ask for a motion. Forgive me, we went directly from a presentation to discussion and questions. So let me ask for a motion to, obviously we've begun the review and the discussion, but a recommendation to issue an RFP. So if I could have a motion. Joe, thank you so much. Do I have a second? And Caroline, we have a second. Okay, so now that we have that set in place, let's continue the discussion and any other questions or comments before I go to public comment. Caroline.
This feels like a phased approach like we do everything else. So I think this will bode well for us because, as Joe said, this isn't a contract up front that we're paying a consultant the whole fee. It is as needed basis. So I think this will bode well for us.
And it is in line with what we've done in other areas of need for the district. So this is not in a completely different approach, correct? Okay. Let's move on to public comment, Jamie, and then we'll come back to the board again.
Sure. Let me share my screen so it'll be easy for everybody to track.
Jamie will help you with these if you'd like.
Thank you. Yeah, we just have 5 at the moment. Okay, our first one is from an anonymous LCUSD parent, and this parent writes, by now, the Marxist/DEI juggernaut, despite vehement opposition by a large portion of the LCUSD community, will be an unfortunate reality for many LCUSD students and families. Rather than serious coursework in the sciences, mathematics, and humanities, students will be forced to parrot and regurgitate Marxist critical race theory pablum, rather being prepared for a future of global competition by nations who care little about left-wing navel-gazing identity politics. Our kids will read the likes of Kindi, be largely enumerate, and focus on inane Marxist theories which seek to destroy America from within. Given this, assuming this gets past LCUSD censorship, the parents are asking, 1, exactly how much time of our kids' day will be squandered on DEI-related instruction? 2, what important and serious coursework will be left out so teachers have time for DEI? 3, what is the mechanism LCUSD teachers will use to provide parent specifics on coursework related to DEI? 4, what is the opt-out mechanism for number 3? It is unfortunate LCUSD chose to go down this path. Beyond 1 through 4 above, it is both incumbent for parents to teach one's kids about the truths of the human person and the rich narrative behind American history, Western philosophy, and Judeo-Christian tradition, anecdotes to DEI as it were, so that there are active participants in the American experiment, not destroyers. Second, until LCUSD regains some sanity and listens to the community, all funds to the Educational Foundation, PTA, and future parcel taxes should immediately cease. Finally, it should be stated for the record, the leadership of LCUSD created this unfortunate situation, not the parents. Now, please answer the questions above with specifics, please.
So we just, for clarification, thank you for the comment and obviously the need for clarification. The standards-based instruction will continue. Our academic rigor will continue. Wendy, can we add any clarification?
Sure. I mean, I think that we're not talking about us being trained in curriculum. We know the curriculum. Our teachers have credentials from the state of California on how to deliver curriculum. I don't think I've heard anybody object to the developmental assets framework that's been a part of our district approach to wellness for about 15 years. The premise of developmental assets is that teaching students and engaging with students on how to be respectful, to comport themselves with a sense of dignity and a positive identity, to contribute to the climate of care in their school. You know, one of the founding premises of developmental assets is that it's not adding to the plate, it is the plate. So when teachers stand at the door and greet students as they can come in, that's during passing period. That's not taking any instructional time. That increases the climate of care on the campus. Those are the approaches, the attitudes. When you have a bullying situation and the student harms the community and there needs to be a restorative practice, that student is typically sent to the principal's office. If the principal has a whole cadre of training, then that conference that takes place in the principal's office will be reflective of these. So there might be some instructional time if your child makes a poor choice, but hopefully that instructional time will be minimized in the conference with the principal who's well-versed in creating a climate of care.
So just to be clear, we are not taking away students' instructional time for Marxist ideology, etc.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Our robust and rigorous educational program is based on the standards that are put forth to us by the state of California, and those are the content standards on which we instruct And all of those instructional minutes will be devoted to those content standards.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Next item, next public comment, Jamie.
Thank you. Our next comment comes from LCUSD parent Mari Gothheim. And Mari writes, thank you, Supervisor Sinet, for affirming at the last DEI hearing on 5/18/21 that this is not a cover for critical race theory and we are not espousing critical race theory. The last DEI consultant hired by the district at a cost of approximately $95,000 was a strong proponent of CRT and ended up recommending a list of parent and training resources heavily weighted towards leading CRT proponents such as Ibram X. Kendi and Nicole Hannah-Jones. Before you spend another $60,000 on DEI consultants, I recommend you take the following steps. 1, survey the community to identify the level of support for spending $60,000 on DEI consultants versus other staffing priorities such as class size reduction, teacher salaries, music education, etc. 2, state expressly in each request for proposal and each contract services that the district does not espouse CRT and the works of CRT proponents such as Abram X. Kendi and Robin D'Angelo and Nicole Hannah-Jones shall not be cited as reflective of district LCUSD DEI policy and shall not be used as training material. And 3, bring all consultant and hiring training materials to the forthcoming DEI Oversight Committee and then to the district governing board for advanced approval. These sensible measures will be much appreciated and will assure the community that the district's adopted DEI framework will be implemented as promised without the divisive CRT slant.
Thank you so much for the information and the suggestions. Next item.
Thank you. The next one comes from Jack Strudel, LCUSD parent, and Jack writes, I ask the board to refrain at this time from committing or authorizing the expenditure of district funds in the amount of $60,000 for, quote, subject matter experts. As I understand it, the relevant subcommittee recommended this amount for an array of purposes, including, quote, experts, but also to cover professional development, parent education, etc. I'm also concerned, based on the experience with Christina Hill Elliott, who provided one-sided dystopian view of the district, that engaging any, quote, expert on DEI who is not familiar with our district will not be able to learn enough about it, including the recent history and DEI committee's work on crafting a unique approach to DEI that abjures critical race theory to provide meaningful. To that point, if anyone is selected, it should not be anyone who has publicly advocated CRT because the committee and the board have concluded that CRT is not a part of LCUSD's DEI program. If there has to be any engagement of a consultant, a priority should be to train the teachers in understanding differing viewpoints. Board member Josh Epstein made an excellent suggestion in May that we may consider some form of political viewpoint diversity sensitivity training. Too many students who have opposing viewpoints and too many teachers and parents for that matter are afraid to speak their minds because in the current climate, they find themselves name-called, ostracized, shamed, etc. This leads to self-censoring and deprives our community of robust exchange of ideas. Finally, the board should also consider refraining from this expenditure until, one, it has studied a far more fundamental problem of what educational deficits were caused by the inability to provide in-person learning for over a year, March 2020 to April 21, and how these deficits can be remediated. And 2, the Oversight Committee has indicated that it needs this help. Perhaps this can be discussed at the first Oversight Committee meeting.
Thank you for the feedback. I don't think one is exclusive of the other. Addressing learning loss as well as trying to identify needs and meeting the needs are exclusive of each other. Am I understanding that correctly, Wendy?
Yes, I mean, I think that, it is 100% our priority to welcome students back, welcome them back with a very, very key eye towards delivering in the instruction, identifying through diagnostics where the standards have been mastered, where the standards might show gaps or weaknesses, finding a system of intervention responses for the students who might demonstrate learning gaps, and just blazing in LCUSD glory through the curriculum so that we are back in-person instruction, really doing all of the things that we're known for in terms of delivering a world-class education. At the same time, we're going to see kids who are struggling, who feel anxiety, who have a lack of sense of self, who have trepidation about being in the classroom, who need, who have unprecedented needs for the unprecedented experience we just went through. And we can't look the other way saying that all we're here to do is deliver curriculum.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. And to Mr. Shadell and Ms. Gottheim's comments, I have no doubt that the information will be transparent, that you will continue to communicate with us and be clear and open, and just like we have always tried to be. And the focus is and will always be meeting the needs of our students and our staff and our families. Thank you. Next comment.
Thank you. Our next comment comes from Jill Simone, an LCUSD parent, and Jill writes, earlier today, a very small core group of stakeholders and parents and community members just learned of a request for $60,000 to be allotted for a new diversity consultant. As you might interpret, based on the overwhelming 3-to-1 opposing comments for the 3-year DEI plan at the previous DEI meeting, we are gravely disappointed, concerned, and outright livid about this new request. $60,000 can and should be spent on academic programs such as advanced math science, language arts, music arts programs, special education needs, technology, and or specialized programs that motivate learners to excel based on hard work and merit. To allot additional taxpayer money for politically motivated programs that seek to divide children by differences and confuse families with misguided and manufactured assessments, a la Jerry King's recent workshop, is irresponsible and deeply disturbing. No to additional funds for outside consultants who seek to disrupt and destroy so they may obtain a salary from districts who have been fooled and threatened into hiring them to align with today's Marxist-driven trends. Those of us paying attention who caught this agenda item today look forward to communicating this tragic request for funds to LCUSD parents and to seeing another overwhelming 3-to-1 opposition for this at the next board meeting.
Thank you, Jill, for the comment. Okay, let's go back to discussion and continued. Any questions, any other commentary, any other clarification needed? Dan.
I think I'd point out that Wendy and the other board members have done a very nice job of discussing all the reasons that a consultant is useful, brings expertise in and all that. I think just the comments make me think that there's also another side that we as a district have to do what we can to prevent negative incidents of bullying. And you know, if we had an unfortunate incident of bullying on campus or anything else like that, the district's liability could be huge. And so I think it's incumbent upon us from a fiscal standpoint to do everything we can to prevent that kind of conduct and prevent an incident in the future. So I think that there's not only the positive aspects that you all talked about earlier, but there's also just the sort of loss prevention aspects that I think are important to consider as well.
Dan, thank you for bringing up that point. That's really actually an extremely important point. Anything else? Okay, we have discussion, we have a motion and a second. So I'm going to call the question. So if I could have move towards approval to the recommendation to issue an RFP with the understanding, obviously, with some of the feedback and some of the requests of the public comments that were made, that we continue to maintain transparency, that we commit to making sure that the focus is always on students, that the district is in charge and leads the way, and that information is available always to families and communities. And that academic rigor is not going to take a backseat to anything else. So, having said that, all in favor of recommending the issuance of the RFP? I see everyone's hands. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the community members who've made the comments.
Yes, thank you to the community members.
Well, moving on to the next agenda item, it's the approval of new board policies, and we have and are being asked to adopt, or the recommendation is to adopt the policy. So I'm going to ask Anais Wen to present the information, then I'll open it up for a motion in a second, and we'll move forward from there.
Thank you, Kaiser. So tonight, with this item 12H, I am bringing to you some new board policies that we didn't have in our policies for La Cañada Unified School District. However, they have been recommended from CSBA, and one of them has to do with instruction in the history and social science department or subject area, and the other one has to do with athletic competitions. I submitted these to you, I think on Friday, and also through toward review. And if you have any questions to ask about any of it, I'll be more than happy to respond. But pretty much it describes the athletic competitions, all the different rules that we have to go by, the program, the supervision, the non-discriminatory and equivalent opportunities for all students, and the complaint procedures, CIF information. So it's very pertinent information that we need so that when we need to refer to a policy that we have one in place. And the second one has to do with history, social sciences instruction, which talks about our instruction being aligned to the standards with the new framework. We will be adopting new textbooks, not in this coming year, but the year after. So we want to make sure that our policy is already in place. So I ask that the board approve the adoption of these new, 2 new board policies this evening.
Okay, thank you, Anais. So before we move forward, just to clarify, you mentioned the acronym CSBA. Anais, it's the California School Board Association recommendation.
Correct. Thank you.
All right, so if I could have a motion for the approval of the the new board policies, the 2 new board policies, and then I need so Josh, I've got a motion, and then I have a second. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I am, apparently. Josh, I've got a motion, and Dan, I've got a second. So let's open it up for discussion, comments, questions, and we'll move from there. This is an asterisk item, so we do need to hopefully take a vote.
Thank you, Kreitzer.
Any questions? Clarifications needed? Comments? Any public comments? Okay.
No.
Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a vote. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the approval of the adoption of the new board policies for the athletics and social sciences? Myself, Caroline, Joe, Josh, and Dan. Thank you, everybody. The next agenda item is the approval of revised board policies. And again, we'll do the same thing. Anais, go ahead and present, and then I'll ask for a motion.
Thank you. So this particular board policy is regarding students and non-discrimination and harassment. You have seen the minor revisions that have been made. Some of it is just change of language, and others are additions to what existed prior to these revisions. So again, I ask that you please vote and approve this so we can start using the updated practices that are described in this board policy.
Thank you, Anais, again. And so if I could have a motion to adopt the revised board policies. Dan, I see your hand. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Go ahead. Say what you want to say.
So moved.
Thank you, Dan. Josh, is that a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Joe.
Just to clarify, this one was already in place, so it's not, did you leverage CSBA for this one or just enfolded some language in?
Yes.
Because I know we kind of skimmed over it, but I've been very impressed with the quality of the CSBA content we receive. We participate with them on an annual basis. They provide us a lot of good leadership and guidance, and that's kind of the culmination of lots of school districts' work and suggestions to get to those kind of footprint of policies. So when we see something move quickly like that, it's because we're aware that it's been CSBA approved, and we trust by and large what they come up with and feel confident about what we're putting in place as a result.
Correct, Joe.
Okay.
Everything that we do is guided by CSBA. And then also we put another filter to it to see if it's a practice that is appropriate for our district.
Yeah.
Sometimes
We're not
right. They recommend things that perhaps are not things that we may want to do. So we discuss it, we look at it, then we bring the recommendations to the board. So we always try to keep our La Cañada Unified School District practices alive and well, and making sure that it meets our students' needs, our families' needs. So they're already filtered twice, once through CSBA and once through LCUSD lens.
And let's be clear, we're not required to adopt them, but they're very attuned at finding gaps or districts have said, hey, can you give us some language here that's well thought out and vetted across districts, right? So it's a useful way to get started versus us putting in a first stab, and we can then refine, to your point, behind it, right? Make it La Cañadas.
Yes.
And they also have a whole cadre of legal teams that they vet all this through. So we're all also, being assured that meets all the standards for, the legality and the best practices in terms of implementation of anything that might be ed code driven.
Yep, great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And the clarification is important. There are over 1,000 school districts in California, and California is a huge state with lots of different areas. So the focus on making sure it fits what La Cañada's goals and specific needs are is extremely important. I appreciate that. So any other questions, comments? Any public comments?
No public comments.
Thank you so much. All in favor? I have a motion and a second. All in favor? I see Joe, myself, Caroline, Josh, and Dan. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us through our agenda items. I am now moved on to consent agenda. If I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Caroline. Dan, I saw your hand. Can I take that as a second?
Second.
Appreciate it. All in favor of the consent agenda? I have everyone's hand. Thank you, everybody. Consent agenda item has gone through. We are now into communications. Let me begin with, Jamie. Anything you'd
Thank
like?
you. I have something super exciting to share.
Please.
So this Saturday, the ISTE conference, the International Society for Technology and Education, kicked off, and it's virtual. And we have been noticed by the CEO a couple of times. He's called us out in some mentions of some of our programs related to digital citizenship, which is just amazing. And this year, somebody from ISTE reached out to learn a little bit more about our programs. And I mentioned some of the things our high school students are doing. And tomorrow on the main stage at ISTE, part of a keynote is one of our high school students sharing. And I don't know if she understands, she's in a keynote of an international conference. So I'm kind of downplaying that. That's why I'm not announcing it until tonight. But tomorrow, Isabella O will be speaking, representing La Cañada High School and the work she's done with Student Tech Council and ASB to talk about student voice and making change in your community. So it's pretty incredible. So I'll get a recording and I'll be able to share with all of you, but it's live tomorrow morning.
That is so exciting, Jamie. Thank you. Definitely we want to see and hear how it went and the best positive energy towards the presentation. That is so exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Anais, is there anything you'd like to share?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline.
I just want to thank Wendy and the cabinet. This year's over tomorrow. Yay. Thank you for everything that you guys have done. We could not have gotten through this year without you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. And Caroline, thank you again for doing the work on behalf of the district, or this governing board, excuse me, for the parade on Monday, the hometown parade, and making sure all the information was updated, etc. So thank you for that. Josh.
I just wanted to express some excitement about how much construction is going on around our campuses and just how much work is happening over the summer. I've been seeing pictures and I'm excited to see it live, but it really is, it's an exciting moment for La Cañada as we're seeing this bond, all the bond funds really being put to use. And I'm really excited to see what happens.
Thank you, Josh. Joe.
Nothing major. Just wanted to another shout out. Congrats to Coach Dave and Coach Carl, our new football and baseball coaches. I think two fine candidates, La Cañada men, so to speak. They know our district and care about our kids, and I'm looking forward to supporting them however we can. And then as a byproduct, let's win some games, right? So.
Yeah. Dan.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mark.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Wendy, I'm going to get to you in just a moment, but Mark, you'll have to forgive me. I know I am scheduled to go on a walkthrough, and I'm so upset that I cannot be there tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for the walkthrough of the job site. So I just want to open it up to see if there's any other board member that is available my inability and my schedule change came up literally at 2:00 this afternoon. So is there anyone else that is?
Well, what is it? What's the time and place?
Palmcrest.
And I know
Also, Mark.
All right, which 9 a.m. kind of out in the front parking lot at 9 a.m. at PCR. And we do them every couple of weeks so other people can join in the future too.
I'll do that every couple of other weeks next time around. So Caroline, I thought it might be exciting for you if you wanted to participate. I'm so happy that you've raised your
Caroline,
hand.
you gotta wear one of these.
Oh, great. I can't wait to take a picture with that.
Well, it's even better. The neon vest is the real fashion killer.
Thank you. And I am really disappointed I can't be there, but next time, I'm going next time. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Wendy.
Nothing, I just, I think I'm gonna echo what Caroline had to say. I always appreciate us taking a minute when we hit calendar markers, and tomorrow is the official end of this school year. And I'd just like to thank the governing board for the stellar leadership, and really got a feeling tonight of this board gelling, and it was fun. So thank you for a very good meeting, and thank you for your leadership and stewardship throughout what we are going to always refer to as this unprecedented time.
Yes, it has been. I know personally for me, it's service to me is extremely important. Service is a value that I share and have wanted to pass on to my children, and I think I have. I think it's important to serve the community that we are in, from my perspective, and I appreciate working with all of us together to make sure that the district maintains the reputation it has, the academic rigor it has, but most importantly meets the needs of our students. And I continue to welcome and thank the community for their participation and the feedback, and we will continue to listen openly and be open with all that is going on with the district. Again, everyone, thank you. Have a wonderful and safe weekend. July 4th, very special. And I look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. The meeting is now adjourned. It's 9:37 p.m. Thank you all.
Night, everyone. Be well.